story begins with our hero, Aiden, and his family being chased off a cliff. My guy is a bona fide barbarian, and hails from a clan that considers ending life on the battlefield an honor. His father fights hordes of men like himself, as they make their way to our hero and his mother. With a loud voice, the honorable barbarian yells at his spouse to prepare the transportation spell while he buys them time. The woman immediately kickstarts the process as she holds her child at the cliff's edge. Watching closely, the boy sees as his father massacres the men who betrayed him. Despite being an overpowering beast, he is stabbed by multiple spears. His son, who can only shout and worry, is stopped by his mother from committing a reckless act. As she prepares the spell, her husband continues the endless slaughter. Finally, the spell works and she lets go of her son, who is being carried away by a bright light. She tells him that anywhere in the Starlands will be better than where they are. With tears on her face, she begs the child to survive. The boy cries out as he tries to grab his mother, saying he is too scared, but with a roar from his father beckoning him to become strong enough to lose nothing and no one can touch him, edging him to survive. He cries as he accepts his father's last words. He noted that there wasn't a trace of fear from his father's last words, but only pride as a barbarian. Years later, on Earth, some street thugs corner up a rich kid named Jin T just after his college entrance exams with the hope of robbing him. Surprisingly, Four Eyes seems calm and even warns them that something bad might happen if they continue with their act. Cluelessly, they make fun of him, but he then speaks about his friend who will be present. In return, one of the thugs grabs him to hit him, but he is suddenly pummeled to the ground by a force that broke through the nearby wall. Trying to process what happened, one of the bullies looked toward the source of the demolition and spotted a rather huge person who had his fist stretched out. The huge lad, who happens to be Aiden, but goes by the name Kang Chialdu, finds his friend. Noticing the ongoing scenario, Kang grabs one of them and pummels him for trying to harass his friend. Moments later, the friends casually walk away from the scene. Chialdu, who happens to have the build of a pro wrestler, has his humanity questioned by Jin for punching through a concrete wall. The big O flinches as his cover is nearly blown, but he affirms to be human. Despite Jin's piercing gaze, Chialdu manages to change the subject and urge them to go home. In Chialdu's home, during dinner, the high schooler has 3 rice bowls emptied and is on his 4th one. Despite the huge rations being devoured, our protagonist's foster grandfather wonders why the boy isn't eating much like he used to. Even the barbarian questions the old man for not eating plenty, but the man tells him that age has taken a toll on his body, so he gets satisfied watching him eat instead. Chialdu notes the person he is grateful for the most is his grandpa, a man who as a boy liked him with no place to go and raised him without asking for anything in return. Still having their meal, the grandfather informs him that his coach called asking if he's going to be a boxer. To his surprise, the boy rejects the idea of being an athlete and finishes his food. Shocked by the revelation, the old man asks him why. After all, he has won every award for every sport he has tried. He wonders if it isn't a waste. Inwardly, Chialdu notes that humans and barbarians are different species, so participating in sports would be violating the spirit of fair play. He believes that there's only one path for a barbarian, and instead of a warrior, a bloody battle against worthy opponents. The problem he has is that the earth is too peaceful. Sitting outside, after his meal and pondering on the matter, Chialdu's train of thought is interrupted by his grandfather's reaction to the news. Quickly, he enters the living room and watches the report on the TV, which talks about an unidentified disaster that occurred in Qingju. Wondering what led to it, he asks his grandfather, and the man explains to him that some monsters appeared in that area and the death toll has already passed 120. He worries that it's the end times. As for our protagonist, seeing the additional footage of one of the monsters on TV, he starts shaking. He then informs his grandfather, who beckons on him to sit down, that he'll be going out for a bit. Several minutes later, Chialdu has Jin take him to the venue. The friend tells him that it'll be the last time he'll act as his chauffeur, urging him to get his license. Thanking the Silver Spoon for his help, Chialdu remembers seeing the monster he saw on TV as a child and wonders if it's connected to the world he used to live in. Suddenly screeching to a stop due to the traffic ahead, the party gets down from their vehicle to check what's going on. They spot the military and confirm to be in the disaster area. Some men spot Chialdu thanks to his hefty build, so they come over to him and ask him which group he's with. Not understanding what they meant, the kid looks at them flatly, but one of them stretches out a card after concluding that the boy doesn't belong to any group, asking him to join if interested. The confused teen asks if the group is a sort of guild where warriors gather. He sees the name New Star Development written on the card, and one of the men laughs at the boy's question, thinking he's fooling around. The person explained that since they are developing planets, they are more like workers than warriors. He then urges the boy to join their group. Realizing that they aren't what he wanted them to be, Chialdu tears the paper as he declares that he's a warrior. He says that being a worker would be shameful for a warrior, triggering the man who handed him the invite. The macho dude calls the kid a greenhorn and yells at him for refusing their company's offer. Right back at him, Chialdu gets agitated as he feels that warriors are being insulted. Immediately, a thick dark miasma erupted from the tunnel. Everyone around gets ready for what's to come, but the 2 high schoolers do not know what's going on. The miasma forms a huge black ball that announces to them that the end times trial will commence. It states that the end of the world is approaching rest, but another planet called Nova extends a helping hand to Earth's inhabitants. With a massive beam emanating from the orb, it tells them to escape through the portal to Nova. The high schoolers are in no doubt caught in the beam and are brought to an unknown land. As they check around, realizing they are in the forest, Jin freaks out due to not knowing where he is. He starts blaming his friend and even asks where his car is. Suddenly, a message pops up in front of them informing them of their objective, which is to obtain 1 goblin coin, with their reward being their change of status. The rich kid, who is unable to process what's going on, is then brought back to reality by his friend. The built boy tells him to look around and he spots a group of goblins brimming with bloodlust. Immediately, Jin trembles, wondering how on earth they are supposed to catch these monsters. As he tries to pass his message to Chialdu, he sees that his friend has sprinted towards the green creatures and planted his fist into one of their faces, knocking the unfortunate goblin miles away. Chialdu had waited for a moment where he could confirm his true strength, so seeing an opportunity like this, he grabbed it. The lad swings his fist in whichever way at the monsters, stating that his barbarian instincts are telling him to bring on the end times, noting it to be his chance. Chialdu clobbers through the zombies and it surprises Jin T. The ogre of a man smashed 3 goblins instantly. He then notices the fallen creatures disintegrate like a final game boss. Suddenly, a coin appears and a notification pops up, informing Chialdu that he has gotten the goblin coin. An extra info indicates that the currency is non-transferable. The big brunt stretches forth his hand, and as soon as the coin lands on it, it dissolves. A message pops out, indicating that our protagonist has passed the trial and has earned the right to become a citizen of Nova. An instruction appears telling him to cross the portal to enter Nova. The boys read through the message and the confused Jin T is clarified by his barbaric friend as he points to a purple wormhole floating above the trees. Moments later, Jin looks roughed up due to fighting goblins. He curses his friend for hurling him into the midst of goblins without warning. The child yells if he wants him killed, and Chialdu is left with no choice but to remind Jin about the non-transferable rule that is being imposed on the coins. Hence, Jin has to earn them himself. Still annoyed at the sudden act that happened earlier, Jin continued his protest. As a result, his back is left exposed to a goblin that lunges forward to attack him. Luckily, the barbaric friend is nearby and he swats the creature like a bug. Chialdu then assures his friend that he won't let him die. After all, it's his fault that he is with him in the strange land, so he'll take responsibility and help. Jin thanks Chialdu and watches as the goblins disappear to indicate that he too has passed the quest. In a nearby bush, a soldier uses his binoculars to examine the area. He spots their duffel bag that was stolen by some goblins earlier. After reporting the information to his fellow sergeant, they then decide to kill the goblins. Not far from them, the 2 high schoolers approach the bag and check out the contents. Seeing that it is rations, they speak about eating some of it before proceeding with their quest. Out of nowhere, 2 soldiers jump while pointing their guns at the teens, mistaking them for goblins. Thankfully, they reassess the situation so no shot was fired. Later that evening, the parties sit together and they have a meal. There the soldiers confirm the boys to be without weapons, and Jin clarifies that they ended up in that land without knowing what kind of place they are. The nerd then asks if soldiers are also participating. He believes that if that were the case, then the status window must be true. One of the men affirms his guess and explains that the government is preparing for the apocalypse. The soldier says that Nova is like the Stone Age and it'll be a place where humans will migrate. For that to happen, they need to work together and build villages. He notes that companies and organizations are also jumping in to prepare for the new era, and a competition unknown to the general public has already begun. Chialdu then asks if there are many monsters like the ones he saw earlier. In response, the soldier affirms his guess in a roundabout way. The kind soldiers leave their duffel bags for the boys, assuring them that they have enough supplies. Jin immediately thanks them from the bottom of his heart. As for our protagonist, he smiles as he remembers the soldier's words regarding how challenging Nova will be and concludes to hunt more. Later that night, after parting ways with the soldiers, Chialdu drags Jin along for a hunt. As usual, Jin complains due to the situation not being reasonable, but his barbaric friend says that they can't sit around, especially since they've got information from the soldiers regarding the place. He notes that they need to grow faster. Not far from them, they see a tower made of wood with goblins guarding it. At the top of the tower, there's a shaman goblin who happens to be chanting spells. Jin asks in bewilderment what is going on, but his friend smiles like he has won a lottery. While the nerd assesses the danger, Chialdu leaps toward the base while holding a frying pan as a weapon. With his eyes burning in fury, he one-shots the goblins guarding the tower and then leaps on it to get his prey. Noticing the boy coming his way, the shaman goblin commands lightning from the sky and zaps the barbarian. Jin shouts in concern after witnessing what just happened. The tattooed shaman goblin snickers as he believes he has won, only to be shocked that the boy is still alive. The goblin strikes him again, but the kid doesn't pass out even though he's charred by the attack. Chialdu notes the attack to feel like his spine is tingling. He says he can take the attack because he is not just a barbarian but the son of the greatest shaman. Taking a huge leap, he appears in front of the tattooed goblin and strikes it down with a lightning-coated attack, saying that the pain that doesn't kill him makes him stronger. The result crashes the tower. After the rubble clears, Xiaodu is shown lying on his back as he notes what he faced to be dangerous. He also notes that it's thanks to the magic resistance from his mother's bloodline that he was able to endure the attacks. More goblin coins and a golden orb appear. The status window appears and reveals the orb to be a mana orb. It states that it can be activated with 10 goblin coins. The mana orb permanently grants the user a small amount of mana. Lastly, it's non-transferable and exclusive to the Apocalypse Trial. The charred boy wonders if he can gain mana like a shaman. Suddenly, the orb enters his chest and he is enveloped in mana, noting that he feels like he has powered up so well that it puts his previous efforts to shame. While wondering if it's the power of the orb, Jin runs to meet his friend and wonders why he is still fine after being struck by lightning. He asks again if Xiaodu is human, but the Brunt tells him that they need to hunt even more. The fighting maniac urges for more combat against the shamans, but his friend can't relate, so he yells at him to stop. The following day, after waking from a tent, Jin spots Xiaodu and realizes that the barbarian hunted goblins without sleeping. Outside the tent, Xiao sits on a nearby rock and holds 3 orbs. He brags about his feat to the rich brat, stating that the extra 2 orbs are for strength and perception. Clutching his arm, he says he can't wait to test his power. After all, he has gotten insanely strong in just one day. Jin sighs and calls Xiaodu crazy. Suddenly, a new task appears in their status window. The theme is for them to escape. From the message, 12 hours have passed in the Apocalypse Trial. Currently, field bosses are appearing about. The status bar clearly warns them to escape since the bosses are too powerful for them. Jin immediately tells his friend to escape with him through the portal. As for Xiaodu, he smiles like a pervert upon hearing the information that there are stronger bosses. Out there on the field, some soldiers try to fend off a giant ogre, but their bullets don't work on it. The monster swings his stick at them, and just before the moment of impact, Xiaodu appears and breaks the club with a single punch. The surprised soldiers wonder how it's possible, but Xiaodu tells them to step aside. He takes a stance as he notes that he needs to fight the monster bigger than him. Xiaodu leaps to attack the ogre, and as soon as his fist collides with its skin, he compares the ogre's skin to steel plates. Immediately, the ogre reciprocates the attack and our main character eats dust for a few minutes. Jin, who just arrived at the scene, is shocked that Xiaodu got overpowered. The soldiers behind him then explain that it isn't easy to take down field bosses. The requirement needed for such an act is a tank class. The ogre then walks up to the lad and tries striking him on the head. Luckily, Xiaodu's instinct kicks in and he manages to avoid the blow. The adamant boy admits that he has to avoid a head-on clash. The ogre then launches its fists at the barbarian, but the boy simply evades them. Uses its strength against it by toppling it with its momentum. After smacking the monster on the ground, Xiaodu leaps into the air and tells the ogre to grit its teeth. He crashes his fist into the ogre's face, shattering its teeth. The boy doesn't stop there as he continues hurling heavy blows at the monster's face. The shocking sight terrifies the soldiers since it looks like a norm in their world is being violated. Moments later, Xiaodu rejoices like an athlete who just surpassed the world record. This is due to winning against something far stronger than him. After the ogre's defeat, it forms into a black orb. The status window opens up to show Xiaodu what the ability is. Seeing it, the lad stares intently. Later, the party gathers at the base of the portal and the soldiers thank Xiaodu for saving his life. Before they leave the high schoolers, they advise them that they should buy as many items as possible from the shop before going to Nova. The soldiers point in a direction and the teenagers spot a goblin with blue eyes. The creature spoke fluently and it shocked the humans present. The soldiers then leave the boys to give their report. Immediately, Jin asks his pal what they should get since they have lots of coins. Without wasting time, the party concludes by buying plenty of equipment. They rejoice as they carry their bags of weapons and head to the portal. Standing in front of the purple wormhole, Jin asks Xiaodu if he isn't nervous since they are finally going to another planet as usual. The barbarian says he is brimming with excitement. They are finally taken to Nova, and upon arrival, they note the planet to have 2 moons. Nova gives off a vibe similar to Earth, but it's subtly different. Arriving late in the night, the Wanderer's spotlight's not too far from them. Jin notes that there must be people gathered in that area and suggests that they head in that direction. Xiaodu suddenly cuts in saying that they've got a problem. He announces that he's starving and Jin immediately freaks out, noting that his pal turns into a beast when he's hungry. He wonders what they should do since it'll take them half a day to get to the village tent. Suddenly, a voice asks them if they just got to Nova and if they need any help. Turning their backs, they spot a blue-haired beauty. Immediately, Jin starts mediating with her, asking if there's anywhere nearby where they can find food, claiming that they arrived there with nothing. The girl disagrees silently with his last point as she looks at the wrapped cloth being carried on a stick. She then beckons on them to follow him, stating that they need to help each other in such apocalyptic times. She says she knows a good place to get ingredients. Boys being boys do not bother doubting her for a second and immediately follow her. They walk inside the forest and arrive at a pond, which the girl claimed to have accidentally discovered. Immediately, Jin brings out the fishing rod among the items they bought from the shop. He cautions Xiaodu to wait while he makes the rod. As for the girl, she says she'll bring the bait she left somewhere and head there. Adjusting the rod, Jin says he was worried but he is relieved to meet a kind person. Xiaodu, who tried to calm his tummy, struggles to remain sane. Suddenly, Jin's status window appears, telling him that he has awakened the crafting skill. The barbarian, who has reached his limit, jumps into the pond, stating that he'll catch the prey with his bare hands. Jin yells at the hungry oaf but to no avail. Before long, footsteps crept behind him and the owners asked him why he was alone. Jin turned back and spotted the girl from before with scary men by her side. He then asks her if they are her friends but it triggers them to laugh at him. The hoodlums then tell him that on Nova, if he goes around looking so clueless, he'll get robbed by people like them. Within minutes, Jin finally realizes that they've been tricked. Mrs. makes fun of him by saying it's natural for the weak to get eaten. She then demands that he hand over everything he has. Despite being held back, Jin tells them not to mess with him or they'll seriously regret it. A guy amongst them slaps him for trying to act tough. He then asks to confirm Xiaodu's location and one of them points at the water mockingly, saying that the runt might be hiding there out of fear. Suddenly, Xiaodu comes out of the water with 2 crocodiles biting him. The people around were at a loss for words at the sight. Our protagonist notes the new ability he has to be incredible. Back then when he got the black orb, his status window told him that he could obtain one of the ogre's special abilities. Despite the crocodiles biting him, he does not have a single scratch thanks to the ogre's tough hide ability. Stepping out of the water, he asks the new faces who they are since he didn't plan for them. Immediately, Jin yells for him to save him and they've been fooled. Asking Jin if there's a problem, the rich kid yelled that he got smacked by the troublemakers. The men take their stances against him believing that they'll win against him but one of them gets knocked out instantly. Xiaodu then announces that they should prepare themselves because he doesn't solve problems but eliminates them. After whooping their asses, Xiaodu burns his meat on a stake. From the thugs, he learns that they are from an organization called Yangju's gang and are known for extorting newbies. One of the thugs wonders where Xiaodu's from since he looks so young. Our protagonist then asks if he's their leader but he shakes his head. Their boss name is Jian Yanggu, known as the current strongest in the area. The girl amongst the thugs starts making mouths as she believes their boss will deal with Xiaodu and Jin T. She says that their boss is incredibly powerful with the stat stones he extorted. The urge to vomit suddenly sweeps the air as Xiaodu casually tears through the crocodile flesh from the scale with his teeth. The buffed high schooler throws his meal to the ground and asks the thugs to lead the way to Yanggu. On getting to the headquarters, Xiaodu makes a racket by eliminating the top dogs of the supposed boss. Standing over the pile of knocked out fodders, Xiaodu says the alligator meat has started digesting. The crowd starts freaking out due to the monstrosity before them. They start blaming Zhongdu, one of the thugs, for bringing trouble to their base. Scarface notes that they'll be in trouble if their boss wins since they are already viewed as traitors. Xiaodu yells out the boss's name, demanding that they fight like gentlemen. After causing a racket, Yanggu is forced to come out and meet the source of the noise. As soon as Jin sees him, he trembles due to the gang leader being bigger than his friend. The man asks who dealt with his boys and Xiaodu meets with him eye to eye. Seeing that the troublemaker is a young boy, Yanggu insults him but he gets his diss thrown back to him. While Xiaodu replies, an uppercut is thrown at him at a very fast pace. Thinking he has stopped the boy's mouth from working, Yanggu then decides to give his speech. To his surprise, Xiaodu replies, telling him that the one with the stronger fist is an adult. It turns out that Xiaodu caught the boss's blow from the very beginning. Creating distance between them, Yanggu praises the lad for blocking his punch. He then says that if he wins, Xiaodu should become his second in command. As for Xiaodu, he says he'll be taking the people he whooped earlier with him if he wins. The fight starts with our protagonist throwing a straight punch at the boss's stomach but it doesn't appear to have any effect. Surprised, Jin couldn't believe his eyes. On the sidelines, Zhongdu states that his boss has consumed 12 stat stones with more than half of them being strength stat stones. Zhongdu compares his boss's skin to that of an ogre. Confirming his underling's statement, Yanggu wonders why Qial's fists are getting through. As the teen continues throwing heavy punches, he praises the boss's skin for being so tough, saying he is quite strong. The old man creates distance between them and then bluffs on the lad's punch being ticklish, knowing fully well that he is being torn down bit by bit. The gang leader then charges and throws a punch at the high schooler and at that moment, their fists clash into each other. The result of the attack tears some nails off the boss's finger. It's caused by the ogre's skin. From that attack, Yanggu realizes that the lad has the ogre's skin as an ability of his. Without wasting time, Xiaodu grabs the geezer by the neck and tells him to clench his teeth because his tongue might get cut off. Seeing their boss about to be humiliated, the crew yells that they'll be joining the fight. To their surprise, Zhongdu and the other things who got ass whooped steps in to stop fodders. The crew members start yelling at the traitors and they simply say that they are just loyal to the stronger person. Zhongdu believes that it's better to fight against the crew since he's going to be treated as a traitor no matter what. To their surprise, their boss is sent flying several meters above them. As soon as he lands, he sees Xiaodu following up with another attack and quickly begs him to spare him. Luckily for him, the fist stops over his face. Xiaodu gets mad, calling the boss a pathetic person since he begged for his life. He thought he had finally met an interesting person but he was wrong. Moments later, Chialdu's crew raided the goods from Yongu's. As they are about to leave, the geezer asks the barbarian for the organization he is from since he hasn't seen his face around before. To his surprise, Chialdu tells him that he is simply a high school senior. After the new crew finally set up their tents, Jongdu thanks Chialdu for taking them in. Our protagonist believes that the way of the barbarian is to grow stronger through battle. He rejoices inwardly at his first subordinates. While clenching his fist, he notes himself to be weak because he hesitated when he could have stricken the final blow. He even says that his father would have been disappointed had he seen that he saw the match. He grits his teeth saying that he should have taken Yongu's head. Chialdu then calls Jin his vice captain, asking if he instructed the newbies well. The boy feels elated for being referred that way and affirms that his instructions have been carried out. The bigger high schooler starts feeling impatient as he says that they have to go. Wondering what his friend is saying, Jin asks him where and the barbarian says that he has decided their next venue. He says that his instincts are telling him that if they go beyond the place he is pointing at, they can become stronger. While smiling like a freak, Chialdu reveals their goal to be the huge pyramid that's miles away. The status window pops out, stating the place ahead to be the pyramid sanctuary. The next morning, Chialdu addressed the newbies, telling them to stay behind and guard the tents while he and the vice captain cross the river. Jongdu praises his new boss inwardly and then asks him when he'll be back. The barbarian doesn't know and guesses it's when they return to Earth. Jongdu then informs him that the earliest portal will open in 4 days. This is due to a day already passed since the previous one opened. This means that the portal in Nova opens once every 5 days and a day on Earth is 5 days in Nova. Learning that the portal opens on a schedule, Jin feels drained since he doesn't like the barbaric planet. The captain then declares that they'll be back in 3 days. In Hard, Chialdu notes that he'll be bringing his grandpa the next time since he cannot afford to leave him on dying Earth. After getting info from Jongdu, Chialdu requests his name, and after being told that, he names the man number 1. While talking to the newbies, he tells them that he'll call them 5 siblings with their numbers ranging from 1 to 5. The lady amongst them shouts in protest, but Chialdu glares at them, shutting them up. Shortly after, he and the captain leave the land for their quest. While on water, as the party paddles, Jin notes that his crafting experience is slowly increasing. His captain, however, doesn't like the pace at which they are going, so he ties a rope to himself from the raft and dives into the water. Jin feels triggered by his effort being rendered useless beside his friend. Chialdu starts swimming with the rope, pulling the raft with him at a faster rate than when they were paddling. The feat has Jin noting that his captain quickly adapts. He then compares his life to his friend and steals his resolve to achieve things by himself rather than depending on Chialdu too frequently. They arrive at the venue and see how enormous the pyramid is up close. Their status table pops up, instructing them to contribute to sanctuary activation for special benefits. Jin studies the instruction and asks if it's the first time they've come across something effective. Chialdu encourages him and asks that they get some coins. To his surprise, Jin tells Chialdu that they'll get coins separately. He explains further by saying that he feels like he hasn't done anything on his own, so he wants to try it alone without his help. During sunset, Chialdu fights the creatures in the pyramid. He fights off ostrich dinosaurs and pummels them with his bare hands. Spotting another trying to ambush him, he grabs it by the neck and bashes it on the floor while vowing to turn it into chicken. The result later yields multiple coins and orbs. Suddenly, a pink orb catches Chial's attention. The status window opens, revealing the new skill acquired to be called Throw. If Chial infuses whatever he throws with mana, he can throw with greater power and speed. The boy grabs the orb and smiles at the fact that he has become stronger. He then remembers his friend and wonders how he's doing. On the other side of the pyramid, Jin struggles to bait one of the dinosaur ostriches. He uses his wits to lure the animal and knock it out, delivering the finishing blow with a crocodile tooth that he has. After ending the creature, Jin pants heavily and says that fighting an unfamiliar monster is exhausting, which is in contrast to what his friend said. While the kid rejoices in his victory and assures himself that he can hunt, a lumberjack orc shows up behind him to hand him a deadly blow. Luckily, he sees it just in time for him to react and evade the attack. Classifying himself as finished, Jin notes the monster to be bigger than Jin. It charges at him, but a stone flying at great speed smashes into the orc and the thing passes out. Jin wonders what happened and looks in the direction that the stone came from. He spots his pose. Later that night, they sit down around a fire made to roast the dinosaur ostrich for dinner. Chialdu calmly tells his friend that he was worried, so he came to check up on him. As for the sulking rich kid, he says that he could handle the ostrich dinosaur, but the orc was a different matter. It's between Earth and Nova. After all, he's still not able to do anything on his own. Chialdu encourages his friend and passes him a huge meat chunk. He tells the boy that there's no shame in currently being weak, but if he doesn't stop training, then he can become a great warrior. Grabbing the meat, Jin wonders if Chialdu is still the same person that he knows, because since he got to Nova, he seems to have matured a lot. Our protagonist casually drops the bomb that he is a barbarian on the boy. He explains that he's different from humans, but Jin couldn't fathom what he's saying. Confused, he asks Chial again, and Chial says he is a barbarian from another planet. Immediately, Jin yells as he wonders if Chialdu is a barbarian like the warrior race from games. He then recalled the unnatural events that happened around his friend. Chial then learns that his best friend never knew of his origin. After mentioning it, he tells Jin not to compare himself with him since they are different after all. The following day, they get to their destination and are rewarded with lots of coins. The status window announces that they'll receive a first activation reward. Immediately, Jin starts grinning, saying that it must be like a subspace. As for Chial, he notes that the activation reward seems to differ based on the number of coins collected. Both of them receive the Sanctuary's blessing. Their recovery rate doubled for 24 hours. Jin folds his fists as he begins to feel less tired. While pondering on the matter, he believes that he can become stronger with benefits similar to what he's experiencing. He then vows to stop relying on Chialdu henceforth as it is time for him to get stronger. Not far from where they were, strange loud voices echoed in the air. Turning back, the boys realized that a group of orcs had come for them. Immediately, the shameless Jin leaps at his friend and asks that he save him from their foes. Chial pushes him aside and says that they've both received the benefits of the sanctuary, so they should fight together. As the boy in glasses stammers to get some words out, his friend tells him not to be a coward, since he's got a barbarian by his side. Chialdu tells Kim Jin-Ti to take on the orc that called the rest while he handles the bigger ones. Without any moment of hesitation, the barbarian leaps towards the pack, surprising the four-eyed teen. Jin-Ti yells since he thought they'd fight the monsters together. As for Chialdu, he is nearly stabbed by a spear, but he avoids it and grabs it, while saying that it's unmanly to use a weapon against an unarmed opponent. Chialdu lifts the orc using the spear and slams it to the ground. While holding the spear, he steps on the orc and says they should play fair. Suddenly, the snitch of an orc swings his stick at the barbarian whose guard was lowered, but luckily for him, Jin-Ti slams into the monster while claiming to be its opponent. Surprised, the orc sees the feeble boy staring at him with his fists clenched, saying he should come at him. It doesn't take long for Jin to be clobbered by the stick swinger. After getting smacked in succession, Jin holds his head in pain as he thought he'd die. Thankfully, his recovery buff is still active, so all his injuries dissipate. While feeling all smug, Jin wipes his mouth and prepares to start over. He avoids a strike while noting that he cannot give up because he's scared and he has to be a friend worthy of a barbarian. After the big talk, the stick prints a mark on the rich boy's cheek, sending him crashing to a nearby tree. Jin notes that he relied too much on the blessing. With the kid's glasses away from his face, Jin snorts out blood from his nose. He then says that he's starting to see the orc's attack pattern. Jin gets up and dashes suicidally towards the orc. Reading the monster and knowing that it'll start with a downward strike, Jin evades, then enters into the enemy's range. He picks up his crocodile-toothed dagger and leaps from under the orc's arm and stabs its throat like he's performing an uppercut. The monster collapses and the boy rejoices, having taken down an enemy which seemed impossible for him. Chialdu praises him, noting that the boy has grown quite a bit. Jin says that he thinks he's starting to understand fighting a bit better. The boy looks around and sees that Chialdu has finished off the rest. Immediately, he praises him. Chialdu sees the status window pop up and informs him that he has awakened the spear mastery skill. The captain believes that it's because he fought using the enemy's spear that he got the skill. Jin then remembers how it's the same way he got the crafting skill. Noting that weapons let one learn skills, Chialdu's eyes beam with excitement as he asks if Jin-Ti is fully recovered. His friend could already guess what he meant, and the barbarian points at the orc's footsteps that came from the bush. He believes that if they follow it, they should find their habitat. All this is due to the weapons that he wants to try. At the orc lumberjack village, the two soldiers whom Chialdu saved from the ogre happen to scout the area. They note the fierce-looking village to be why their army hasn't been able to conquer that continent. One of them tells the other that they should get some leave as reward if they report it to be the first to find the enemy's base. Suddenly, a hand grabs them and the soldiers freak out, cautioning them not to raise their voices. Chialdu. The parties then catch up on things. One of the men talks about the ferociousness of the village. The army man says it's better they head back quickly, noting the orc leader to be the most dangerous among their foes. The leader of the orcs is clad with armor and wields a huge axe. The soldiers say that they'll need a company-sized force to face the orc chief. Hearing the threat level of the monster, the barbarian, who happens to glance at the chief's weapon, steps out of the bush with the intent to have it for himself. He and Jin run towards the village, not yielding to the voice of the soldiers beckoning them to wait. After some minutes, the village is bloodied with coins and corpses caused by the duo. Standing in front of the village chief, Chialdu smiles excitedly. He then tells Jin-Ti not to interfere. As he cracks his knuckles, he says a phrase which the orcs mutter when fighting him at the chief. Unknown to him that he has pissed the chief, the armored orc gets up and takes a full swing at the barbarian. Chialdu instinctively evades the attack and kicks the orc's armor. Chialdu confesses that it'll be tough taking on the creature barehanded. The axe charges at him at blinding speed, but he manages to parry it. As a result, his arm stings and he notes that the ogre's skin won't be enough to hold up if the weapon strikes him directly. Changing tactics, the barbarian grabs the orc by the already swung hand and yanks it off the axe. As soon as the monster crashes to the ground, he picks up the battle axe and smashes it on the creature's face, splattering blue blood everywhere. The pop-up screen informs him that he has awakened the axe mastery skill. The soldiers who had been watching the whole fight called Chialdu insane for taking on the orc chief. Jin praises him for the feat, but the soldier, who deems the boy as an amazing person, says he's closer to a monster. Xiaodu stands over the orc, stained with its blood and wielding its axe. He then asks the dead creature who the monster is. As for the soldier, he notes that Xiaodu shouldn't be left free. At the army headquarters, Colonel Jiang Mairan goes through Xiaodu's investigation report. She reads his accomplishments, and the soldier standing ahead of her confirms them to be true. She then asks him why they haven't identified someone like Qiao, and the soldier tells her it's because his age is not eligible for enlistment. Upon hearing that, the colonel quickly goes through his files and learns that Xiaodu is a high school senior. She closes the file and tells the officer to send Xiaodu an enlistment notice and have him join the army early. The officer then explains the situation of the boy to be someone who isn't the type to work under people. As the colonel ponders on how to keep Xiaodu in the military, Warrant Officer O announces his presence. Upon hearing his name, she welcomes him in believing that she has got the perfect person to take on the job. The officer who is with her worries that she'll be sending the DP. The woman confirms it and says that they'll have to bring Xiaodu by force if he refuses. Officer O shows up and asks if something interesting has come up. He happens to be a ranker. The portal in Qingju disaster area brings the people back from Nova. Among them is Yonggu, who happens to be bandaged. The people in the vicinity start speaking ill of the gangsters, recollecting the things that had been stolen from them. As for Xiaodu's party, they see that our protagonist's work already precedes him. Immediately, Zhongdu starts sucking up to the macho teen. Xiaodu appreciates the earth since it's been days since he left it. He then states that he'll be going to his grandpa's. Suddenly interrupting them is a female army officer who happens to be the second lieutenant named Choi Seung-ah. She announces that she has come with a proposal from her army. As Qiao wonders what she wants, Jin stares at her intently, noting that she's pretty. Choi Seung-ah starts by commending the teen's achievements, but before she can complete her sentence, Xiaodu cuts her off, beckoning Jin T to leave with him. Surprised, the lieutenant, who hasn't been ignored before, announces that she's there to offer him a commission as an army officer. Jin is surprised that the military will skip steps just for his friend, but what surprises him more is that Xiaodu refuses the offer. As the beauty queen clenches her fist in frustration, Warrant Officer O says that he told her a guy like Xiaodu wouldn't join them easily. He then calls Qiao an ill-mannered high school brat. As the macho teen turns around to see who called him, he receives a kick which he instinctively blocks. Officer O then asks him if he's ready to talk. Being thrown backwards by the kick, Qiao receives more of it without being able to react. He notes the officer to be strong and fast. Officer O then says that no matter his struggle there, he is still a small fry in New Seoul. Touching his chest, Xiaodu wonders what the soldier meant. Officer O tells the barbarian to accept his sacred duty of military service and he'll help him grow. Xiaodu concluded that all the strong people were in Nova, and without that place, he wouldn't have grown stronger. O asks the high schooler if he feels like enlisting, but the boy says that he'll give it his all too. Xiaodu says that if he wins, then he won't be joining the army. Like a mad bull, he dashes towards the soldier with an arm stretched and a fist prepared to strike him. O takes a stance as he prepares to intercept the teen. The barbarian then hurls heavy punches at the soldier and the man is only left to block them. Upon collision, the soldier wonders where Qiao suddenly got his strength from. The high schooler continues the onslaught of attacks on the officer that hurts the military man's arm. O clenches his arm while wondering how someone can go to Nova only once and come back so strong. He looks at the house fighting style and sees that there's no chance to counterattack. He then decides to bank his pride on the line as a ranker, dashing to trade blows with the Iron Fist. He evades Xiaodu's fist after getting in range, but he couldn't do anything about the follow-up. A knee collides with the officer's face and he is sent flying backwards. His momentum is stopped by a car, but the effect shatters the windows. With the battle ending in Xiaodu's victory, the kid turns around as he tells the officer to meet with him in Nova later. Choi Seung-ah spots the warrant officer crying and is surprised, unknown to her that it's all an act. As Xiaodu leaves the place, Officer O vows to remember his name. At Grandpa's apartment, Xiaodu informs the old man that the earth is ending. He reassures his old man not to worry since he's around. As for the soju drinking man, he stares at Xiaodu's battle axe and says it's hard not to believe. As they continue to dine, Xiaodu tries to convince the Gyuzas. Although he is happy that his grandchild has found his path, as for him he believes he'll farm till he croaks. Like a child, Xiaodu persists, saying that the grandpa can farm in Nova. While gulping a shot of soju, the old man says that adapting to a new place is work. After all, he doesn't have many days left to live. Hearing the old man's point of view, Xiaodu agrees that the planet's trial would be too much for him, not to talk of the savage condition of the planet. Having a new zeal, Qiao plans to bring his grandfather later after he has gotten stronger. A knock from the door is heard and the grandpa wonders who it is. Minutes later, Xiaodu and Jin are in his room. Jin searches the web and informs him that all the Nova incidents have been disguised as disaster national news. Qiao asks if the government is trying to control the media. He believes that people who know the truth will take advantage of it. Jin notes that his barbaric friend is smart at times. Jin reminds him of the soldier he fought and mentions New Seoul. The nerd tells his friend that Qingju wasn't the only place where Nova portals were opening. He states that portals to different locations in Nova open in different regions. Governments and corporations who first learned about the portal were already developing Nova. Among the portals is the most prominent one called New Sol, which can be accessible through the Paju portal. Paju is an area developed under government leadership. The portal in that region first opened 2 years ago, which is approximately 10 years in Nova's time. Xiaodu thinks about it and concludes that there must be many stronger people there. Jin tells him that there's news about New Sol being better for growth. The downside of the place is that they won't get activation rewards like the type in Qingju Nova. Jin asks the macho teen what he thinks about it, and the dude says that staying in a new continent would only make him fall behind, but if it is a more developed place, he could probably get better equipment too. The captain concludes that they head out, but Jin says they do not have a vehicle. After all, his own got confiscated. Xiaodu smiles at him reassuringly and says there's always a way. Later that day, a black car drives the high schoolers to Paju. The vehicle owners happen to be Qiao's new crewmates. Zhangdu informs them that they won't be following them since they have some things to wrap up regarding Yanggu's gang. The female member of the crew then asks if it's okay to go to New Sol. She informs him that the place is managed by soldiers, reminding him that the soldier he beat up the last time looked like a high-ranked one. In return, Xiaodu says that he'll eliminate those who threaten him. They finally arrive at Paju in the night, spotting the portal overhead. The two high schoolers leave the vehicle and stand below the portal. Jin then asks Xiaodu what kind of place New Sol will be, but the macho teen says it doesn't matter as long as he can get stronger. Upon arriving at New Sol, Jin is impressed at the growth they managed to achieve in just 10 years. The civilization has reached the level of the Joseon dynasty. As they absorb the scenery, a woman yells for help because a thief had robbed her. The thief, who seems to be heading in Xiaodu's way, raised his weapon at him, telling him to get lost if he doesn't want to die. Without knowing what happened next, he is grabbed by the face and pummeled to the ground. Xiaodu then yells that soon enough, he'll take over New Sol. The boys are rewarded food by the lady they helped. Jin sees that it's real soup and rice. The woman in return says she would have lost a month's worth of earnings. Jin appreciates civilization and remembers how he ended up puking due to eating undercooked alligator. Within a blink of an eye, Xiaodu has emptied multiple bowls. Four Eyes freaked out since he just downed his first. Still happy, the woman shows up with more rations, telling her to eat as much as she wants, claiming it's free. In return, Xiao tells her to inform them if anyone bothers her anytime. He then digs into her food the moment he grabs the bowl. The old woman appreciates his help and informs them that the village is brimming with trouble despite being under the soldiers' protection. Jin asks if it's frequent that she encounters such a problem, and she affirms. The old lady explains that due to New Sol's population explosion, game has become scarce and the place has become a world where the strong prey on the weak. Xiaodu smiles at the outcome of things, stating that the bad guys will become his prey. The woman then explains that things don't work that way. She advises the big oaf to be careful and to always fight while using his search skill. The clueless high schooler asks what she means. The woman gets serious as she explains the search skill to be essential. It is a skill that is obtained from hunting horned owls in the hunting grounds. The skill lets them check other people's abilities. Jin reacts happily as he realizes that they can use the skill to see how much they've grown. Immediately, Xiaodu and Jin get ready to go to the hunting grounds. Seeing that the boys are about to head out, the shopkeeper decides to get them equipped. Moments later, the boys put on their respective armors as they walk toward the hunting ground. Xiaodu praises the durability of the armor and Jin speaks about them needing weapons. They head to a blacksmith recommended by the lady, but on getting there, the place is empty. A drunk man holding liquor and a hammer goes to the shop and the boys tell him that they came for weapons. The drunk blacksmith flatly tells them to leave since he doesn't have any weapon. Jin then asks if he can make them since he heard that the man can make any kind of weapon. As if scoffing at them, the drunk blacksmith informs them that the blacksmiths in Seoul have gone out of business. Xiaodu asks why and the man says it's because finding iron is harder than gold. He continues with his prattle, letting them know that the Obongsan iron mine has been taken over by bandits. The man answers Xiaodu that the bandits are looters, but they operate on a different scale from common thugs. In New Seoul there exist three powerful figures known as the Three Grandsons. One of them happens to be Jang Ho-chial, the bandit of Mount Obong. The men are terrifying individuals who not only loot but commit murder. The grandsons have taken many subordinates, causing problems for even the military. The drunk man notes that if a war were to break out, it would be a severe blow to New Seoul. Getting excited by the sound of powerful foes, Xiaodu brings out his battle axe. He then asks the blacksmith if he will make him a weapon if he takes care of Jang Ho-chial. Immediately the blacksmith sees Xiaodu's weapon. He starts to question him where he got it from, but our protagonist makes him promise to keep his word. Xiao then tells the man to sober up so that after he's done defeating the bandits, he'll come back to commission the best weapon. The party leaves the blacksmith and heads to the hunting grounds. On the way, Jin asks his friend why he needs more weapons since he already has the orc's axe. The warrior then explains to him that the more diverse the weapons, the better. After all, combat styles change depending on the prey, so it's best to be prepared. Getting to the hunting grounds, they see that it's full with a lot of people. Jin starts lamenting that they won't have any prey left. He believes the Qingju portal to be better than Paju's. The huge teen suddenly has an idea. He picks a rock and uses his skill throw to aim it into the forest. The rock collides with an owl, instantly killing it. They walk over to the dead bird and Jin, who is surprised, asks how Chialdu knows about the bird's location. The big oaf then says that what he sensed wasn't from an animal. The bird fades away and Jin urges his friend to learn the skill stone. When he grabs the orb, the status that he hasn't gotten a new skill called Search. The function is to help him observe and analyze the target to produce results. Chialdu uses the skill to check for his information and his curious friend asks him for what it reads. Going through the details, the barbarian sees Fairy's blessing as one of the traits and finds it odd since fairies are hostile to them. Jin suddenly cuts him from his train of thoughts, asking to know his traits, but the barbarian doesn't see anything. As they make fun of each other, two military spies hiding in the woods watch them intently. One of them has a cut on his cheek and it was from the stone Chialdu sent their way. He was fortunate enough for an owl to have intercepted the attack, if not it would have been fatal. The spies consider the situation not to be ordinary and aim to recruit Chial no matter what. Judging by the direction the party is headed, the men conclude that they are going to Mount Aubal. They feel that something bad will happen if the boys go there. Upon getting to the bandits' territory, Jin asks to confirm if they are truly there. Suddenly, some men speak up, praising the boys for having the guts to invade their territory. The looters analyze Chialdu and aim to get his axe. As for Jang Ho Chial, he smiles at his new prey and declares the start of the hunt.